What's happening, everybody? All right, it's the Kawasaki Z900 RS Cafe. We've got her out of the break-in period, and now I can have some fun. So I want to bring you guys a bit of my ever-evolving impressions of this motorcycle as I've been able to spend more and more time with it. Also give you an idea for what I've done in terms of adjustments and modifications. So, adjustments and modifications out of the way first. We've tightened up the suspension just a little bit, at least in the rear, about as far as factory spec will allow, just to make that thing a bit more tight going through the corners. We've also put a G2 quick throttle on the bike, as well as a set of bar-in mirrors. Now the G2 quick throttle, and again, this is stock mapping, stock exhaust, everything else. It does seem to be a little bit snappier. It allows easier blips on downshift, so I'm a big fan of that throttle. In my opinion, it's the way the bike should have come from the factory. And then there's the bar-in mirrors. Now we're rocking the smaller bar-in mirrors. Let me give you guys a real quick, little bit better look at that. Hopefully that helps y'all to see what we are talking about, as opposed to rocking the stock mirrors. These monstrosities right here. So going with those little bar ends, I've got to tell y'all, it made quite a bit of difference in the way that the bike rides. Now you might not understand where I'm coming from, so give me a little bit of room here. You have to remember, guys, that this bike is not a full fairing bike, and that it's rocking a bikini fairing. Basically, it's just a fly screen, or at least a glorified fly screen, in that it's attached to the handlebar. So any weird buffeting that hits that fly screen is going to be transmitted into the handlebars. Some guys will say that the bike gets a little bit kind of wobbly out of nowhere sometimes. Well, I did a little bit of an experiment. Now, what I did is, going down the freeway with the stock mirrors, I just basically put my hand behind the stock mirror. I was trying to figure out, where's the wind going from this palm-sized spatula that's hanging out there for all the wind to grab. And guys, the hole that it's punching in the air is about as big as a serving platter. Well, couple that with having two of them on both sides of your handlebar, plus a bikini fairing that's trying to push air out of the way, and you get all kinds of weird turbulence going on right at about your shoulder level. And I noticed that I would get this weird kind of a head shake thing going on with my bike. And it would kind of depend on maybe how I would position myself on the bike. I could make it worse or better or whatever. So again, that's what spurred this on. I am very happy to report that rocking these smaller bar ends practically eliminated all of that. And if I'm being really transparent with you, I like the bar-end mirrors far more than I like these huge mirrors that were on the handlebars, mainly because I can kind of see a little bit better. I don't have my elbow in the way, and well, they've got a little bit better shot at my blind side. So definitely a bonus and definitely a plus in all areas. If you've got one of these bikes, I highly recommend that modification. Get the little ones, you'll like it. Now, as far as what my impressions are of this motorcycle so far, I have been able to get the bike out and really ring it out. And I'm happy to report that the bike is a lot of fun to ride still for me. Now, the reason why I'm kind of setting it up that way is, well, I'm talking to you, guy of a certain age that is probably interested in this motorcycle. If you come from an old school triple, like an old school Triumph 955, or if you're coming from maybe an RC51, is something along those lines, old school Aprilia Miele, one of those types of bikes, this power range is going to be very familiar to you. And you'll notice that the RPM range is roughly the same. This bike redlines around 10,000 RPM, so do the bikes that I'm talking about. The point is this: it does seem to act like it's got a soft limiter, rev limiter is what we're talking about here. Now up around 95, 97, 100 RPM, it does feel like it lays over a little bit. Now, in doing some research, I've found that a full exhaust and a reflash with some airbox mods, and there's other even more hot roddy things like, all same length runners and all this other stuff, the velocity stacks. All of that can really throw some power up on the top range of this bike. And again, with all of the hot roddy stuff you can do to this bike, if you're into hot roddy motorcycles, this thing will reward you with about 18 to 20 more horsepower, which is to say that to the rear wheels, it's about a 20% bump in power. So pretty good deal there for you if you're thinking about buying one of these and you want to hot rod it and you've got it in your head that you want that awesome, just guttural 900cc 4-cylinder sound. You can get it with this bike, but even more to that point, you can get the sound of the bike that you're looking for with the performance to go along with it, which is a really good thing. Not to say that the bike doesn't perform well, but there is some room to play and some room to grow with this thing, which makes it even that much more endearing to me. Now, as far as what is it like to ride now with everything that's been done to it, the bar ends, the quick throttle, the suspension, guys, this bike puts a big smile on my face every single time I ride it. It is becoming more and more endearing to me the longer I get to spend with it. And that really is saying something. You know, a lot of times guys will get bikes, they start to get bored with it a little bit. I haven't found myself in that boat at all. And again, guys, if you're coming into this motorcycle and you're buying it because of the looks and you're buying it because of just the presence that it has when you're looking at it, how does it make you feel? Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you're coming into this bike from an old school leader class bike, no, it's not that fast by comparison. But man, is it a rewarding bike to ride just as a motorcycle, which brings me to another point with this thing. This bike has kind of some interesting quirks about it that you will not have experienced if you're coming from a fully faired bike. See, the thing with the fully faired bikes is that they're really good on a racetrack. I mean, they look the part and they're functional on the street, don't get me wrong, but the reality is that all of that that's going on with that bike is to make it good on a racetrack. Well, there are some things that are inherently more stable about those motorcycles than with this. Again, we mentioned that bikini fairing. We're also talking about the way that the bike transmits and translates road surfaces to you. There's a lot of insulating that full fairing will give you that you just don't have with a motorcycle with no fairing or a bikini fairing. So if you want to push this bike hard and you're on the street, you'll find that you might get a little bit of a wobble when you're dropping this thing into a corner and you're really banging on it. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I don't mean like the thing's coming unglued. You'll just get a little bit of settling with it, at least with the stock suspension. The way that I see it is like this. This bike is an amazing street bike that is happy to accommodate some bonehead activities and very happy to do so. But it will remind you that you are still on the street, you know, and that's something that's kind of fun. It's like a built-in nanny that you didn't even know you needed. And what I've found with this bike is I will start to, because the bike is so eager to play, it's just a playful bike, I start dragging this thing into corners. I'm really rolling into the throttle, trying to drag this thing around sweepers like I'm on a sport bike, like I'm at Thunder Hill Raceway, and I'm not. I'm on the street. There's some things, little subtle reminders that this bike will give me that, all right, maybe I don't need to be rolling wide open throttle through every apex that I'm hitting at triple digit speeds. Again, the bike is happy to accommodate. But if you come from a track background and you find yourself on this bike, there's some fun, familiar little quirks and giggles that the bike will give you that you just cannot get in a more serious, just track-oriented, you know, hyper sport type of bike. This bike, she's for the streets and she's a lot of fun and she's rewarding, but she makes sure that she reminds you where she's for. So with that, guys, I want to go ahead and start to wrap this video up, but in closing, I just want to tell you guys that the bike is even better now than I thought that it was going to be. I'm finding myself more and more enamored with the idea of just jumping on this thing and going for a blast. That's something that I can't say about other motorcycles that I've owned. And again, if you're thinking about getting one of these bikes, and you're coming from a place where you are more inclined to be maybe an elder squid, but you're just trying to chill it out and have a bike that's capable, fun, and can, again, be playful and put a smile on your face every time, the Kawasaki Z900 RS is a nice place to land. And with that, guys, I'm going to wrap it up. Post up your comments, and we'll catch you on the next one. Adios.